Hey, what's going on, everybody? My name is Matt Jarbo. This is 3 Buck Theater, and today we're going to be doing a Rotten Tomato recap of the reviews of Alien Covenant. Now, the movie opens in 2 weeks, and they dropped the reviews for it today, which is actually a really good sign, to be honest with you. With like the recent film The Circle with Emma Watson and Tom Hanks, they blocked it. They had no pre-release screenings, they had no early reviews, but this time around we're getting 2 weeks out, and the reviews so far are actually pretty good. I'm surprised. So Ridley Scott's movie is currently sitting at 80%. And that's not a bad score at all. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, as you can see, is an 81% certified fresh, whatever you want to call it about that particular terminology anymore. As I like to say when it comes to these particular videos, the RT recap is a quick look at the top 5 positive and the top 5 rotten reviews for these films. And the reason why I do this is because even though I don't trust Rotten Tomatoes to give me a proper aggregate, I do like to see the summaries of the reviews in order to get an idea of what to expect. And I think that a lot of you guys out there are the same way. So here I get to basically provide you with that information so you don't have to. And that's the great thing about the internet. So let's take a look here at the positive reviews. So Stacey Lane Wilson from Dread Central says, Alien Covenant is cruel and scary. It's a hard R, and the suspense levels are off the chart. The monsters are believable and terrifying, giving it a score of 4.5 out of 5. Now, what this tells me is that it is going back to the idea of a monster film that was the original 1979 classic. It's a hard R. Okay, that's not something we see much anymore. You know what I mean? Like, not something you would see much in terms of an R-rated summer blockbuster. You know, you could go back maybe a few months ago and look at Logan and John Wick. Both of those films are exceptionally violent and worthy of their R rating. And so those, you know, you could argue maybe are hard R's to an extent, but here you get it. Priscilla Page from Birth Movies Death just says, it's a haunting descent into hell, which is a good just 5-word sentence there, telling us that this is going to take us into the depths of hell. And that, well, I mean, that's why we watch these kind of movies, right? We like to be scared. We like the feeling of being scared. And going back to what Stacey Lynn said, that the suspense levels are off the charts. So that tells me that that definitely has the creep factor as high. Chrissy Puckcho from CBR says, be warned that Alien Covenant is about 40% Alien, 50% Prometheus, and 10% absolutely bonkers. All right. So 40% Alien, what that tells me is that it's going to be a lot of the on-the-ship, close quarters, maybe kind of claustrophobic horror that we saw in the original. I mean, just remember like the whole scene crawling through the vents and just the blip on the radar and like just how intense that was. That's what I'm taking from that. The 50% Prometheus tells me that it's going to do a lot with either the discussions of the engineers, questioning where we came from, talking about the birth of the xenomorphs and maybe the necromorph, and everything else that people maybe possibly liked about Prometheus outside of the ending. I think this is going to expand upon David's particular attitudes and ideas and everything else in regards to what happens in that particular film. And the 10% absolutely bonkers is something I'm just really excited to see. I don't know what that 10% is, but god damn it, give me something crazy. Matthew Pejkovic from Matt's Movie Reviews says here, it's a tense, sleek, and wholly engrossing splice of Scott's previous 2 vital entries in the wide-ranging Alien franchise. Okay, so there's a little bit there to unpack. So it's a wholly engrossing splice of Scott's previous 2 vital entries, meaning Prometheus and the original Alien. Okay, so it's looking at that idea, and maybe that was also a lot to do with like the questioning of where we came from and the questioning of what's out there and also what horrors lie in the dark. So, but it also says the wide-ranging Alien franchise, which would be, you know, Aliens, Alien 3, Alien Resurrection, and both AVP films. which the two AVP films are definitely different in nature. You know, AVP 1 being more of the kind of like hunter versus hunted, you know, mentality, whereas Alien or AVP Requiem was more kind of like a monster horror movie set in suburbia, which is one of the reasons why I really liked it. Alien 3 is kind of but Aliens is like the action-oriented one, the one that everyone really seems to love, and with good reason. It's a great movie, but its departure in thematically and tonally from Scott's version is probably what Matthew was referring to here. The fact that it's wholly engrossing in its own right, and it's not going to be going down the same range that the same pathway that maybe in Aliens or Alien 3 did. And then we've got Kevin P. Sullivan from Entertainment Weekly saying, Alien Covenant indulges in a spectacle that's been missing from summer movies for the past decade or so. It grosses you out and then laughs at you while you puke. Not literally. Okay, so what this is telling me, this is coming from a top critic who writes for Entertainment Weekly and probably watches a lot of the summer films, as many of us do. It's a certain type of spectacle. It's not your over CG laden, you know, superhero film. It's not your family friendly animated movie. This is something that's been missing. The maybe the hard R, high concept spectacle of gore, and that's again not something you see during these particular months. And the fact that it grosses you out and then laughs at you while you puke tells me this movie is going to go places where Prometheus and Alien didn't in terms of gore. And that might actually have been a response to the criticism from Prometheus, where there was not a fair amount of gore. There was gore in the movie, don't get me wrong. The whole thing with the birth scene and the C-section stuff and then her stapling herself back together, that was definitely insane to watch. I saw the movie opening night at the Hollywood ArcLight in 3D, so yeah, you know, the movie was nuts. But in terms of just gore, I didn't feel that it had a great deal of it. Alien, I feel, had more, but maybe that might have also been because of how it was handled and the build up to it, and also the unknowing what was in the dark because we didn't fully see the xenomorph as a whole. So there's things in there that we might get a good look at here, and I think it's going to be kind of a marriage of maybe the two previous films in the from Ridley Scott into the franchise. So let's take a quick look here over at the top 5 Rotten scores, which actually there's only 5. So, that gives you an idea as to how this movie's being perceived. But David Crow from Den of Geek says, here's a pretty looking and aesthetically dazzling picture that dryly remakes the 1979 original with all the perfunctory effort of a master being commissioned to trace the lines of previous work. Now, that is a scathing sentence, but let's take a look at this here. So, what he's essentially doing, and I think this has a lot to do with the criticisms from Prometheus. Prometheus was something Ridley Scott, I think, wanted to toy with. He got the ability to go back into that world. He wanted to make something new, something wholly departed from where the franchise went after his original film in the 70s. But what you've got here is essentially him trying to recapture or remake what made Alien great. I mean, look at Catherine Waterston in the lead role. Very similar to Ripley. Noomi Rapace, right? Elizabeth Shaw's character from Prometheus. Kind of similar to Ripley. And that's not a negative. Ellen Ripley is a badass, is the shit, man. Everyone loves Ellen Ripley. I'm not knocking on that. But you could see where he's pulling from. You could see where he's drawing inspiration from, and this ultimately is one of those things that kind of, I think, ties into that. And then of course it's saying that it's a perfunctory effort of a master being commissioned to trace the lines over previous work. Just basically tells me that he's playing it a little bit too safe. And again, I think this has a lot to do with the criticisms from Prometheus, where people were like, this is too far of a departure. Where are the xenomorphs? This is not what we wanted. And it was confusing in a few spaces and whatnot. And here he's trying to marry the two together. Mike Ryan from Uprocks says, what started out as a simple let's run away from this scary thing is now so bogged down in its own mythology of why these scary things exist, it's almost unrecognizable. Okay, so that is something that's been kind of hinted at heavily in some of the pre-release information, like going back to CinemaCon and whatnot. Some of the footage that they saw, some of the things that were said, it kind of was alluding to, I don't know how much of a spoiler here I want to give based on what I've read, but what David, the Michael Fassbender's android from the first film, from Prometheus, was attempting to do, and how he's attempting to create these creatures as he did in Prometheus and whatnot, that this movie might be trying to bog itself down to the mythology of it. There was a big thing in Prometheus about the engineers and what they did and what they meant. And then here maybe you've got David trying to become his own engineer, to engineer his own thing for whatever reason. We don't fully know yet, but that's kind of what I take from this. And that could bog the story down. What made Alien work is that it was a simple monster movie, a creature feature set in space that was very much played with the darks, not only the darkness of space, but the darkness of just like being alone in a place like that, and what could be coming out of any corner. And it worked very, very, very well. But when you start to kind of bog it down with everything about where the xenomorphs come from, how they were created, who created them, why they were created, for what purpose, and you also kind of bog that in with maybe with what Prometheus was kind of touching on with our own creation, then it could probably run the story awry a little bit. And that's what I'm thinking Mike here is trying to say. William Bebani from Crave Online says, so familiar, so disposable, and so baselessly self-important that it might just make you lose faith in this franchise altogether. That's pretty scathing. That's not like a tongue-in-cheek scathe, like the Den of Geek line up there. But this one is saying that it's basically just kind of so up its own ass that it might make you lose faith in everything. And I think part of that has to do with the fact that people want Alien, they want more aliens, but they want more aliens. They don't really want more Alien, unless it's done something along the lines of maybe Alien Isolation, in dealing with Ripley's daughter and her taking on a xenomorph in a space station. Like there's that mentality, I think, is what people want. I think people want the action, right? I think that's why Alien Marines that came out, or Colonial Marines that came out a couple years ago, that really horrible video game, was why it was so heavily loved, as again part of that there. And so Fionn Nuala Halligan from Screen International says, Covenant raids its own trope cupboard, recycling plot points like the exhausted air in a ship that spent too long in deep space. And again, that goes back to what I said before. Scott, I think, wanted this to be a success, more so than Prometheus, to warrant him making the other movies he wants to make in the franchise, that he felt that he needed to go back to tired plots and old tropes and old stereotypes and whatnot, and recycle all that together in order to move the franchise forward. A very similar example for that would be Force Awakens. They recycle lots of plot points in order to push it forward to the next step. So that could be what this movie is. This could be the stepping stone that Prometheus was not. Prometheus was meant to kind of be its own thing, and then Scott was very much trying during the promotion of that film to be like, no, it's nothing to do with that, totally not going to do it, totally different, and then also still wanting to be part of the same. I get that here. So, and finally, Fred Topol from We Live Entertainment says, Alien Covenant is full of bad decisions, both by the creative team and the characters themselves. There are good set pieces in Alien Covenant, but the story connecting them is nonsense. And that's one of the biggest problems when it comes to horror movies, is that oftentimes the decisions of the characters are so wholly ridiculous that it becomes just dumb. You know what I mean? You're like, why did you do that? Why did you do that? But then at the same time, I like to look at it from a different perspective. And this is my take on it. When I watch a movie like that and the characters are making dumb decisions, I have to ask myself, have I ever been in a situation where decisions, like I'm making a decision in the moment and it's not the right decision, but I don't have all the information. I am quick to react because of what's going on. And I try to associate that with the characters themselves. How would a human react in the situation? Not so much as to how would I react in the situation. So with that, I kind of look at what Fred Topol's saying. I'm like, okay, I get what you're saying there. Like you're saying there's some bad decisions being made, but I read that as, well, I wouldn't do it that way. No. I would survive. You know, that's kind of what I take from that. And I look at these rotten scores for Alien Covenant, and I think to myself, it's got more positive going for it than negative. We can see that Ridley Scott has essentially gone through and pulled from his own cabinet of tricks and done so in a way that might come across as maybe a little, well, lazy and cheap. but it doesn't take away from the overall film itself. And this film is meant to be a setup for another trilogy. Keep in mind that there's also going to be the prequel to this, Alien Awakening, which is going to take place between Prometheus and Alien Covenant. At this point, Ridley Scott doesn't know what he really wants to do with this franchise. I think he's just throwing anything and everything he can against the wall to see what sticks, so then he gets to keep on making them. And I don't necessarily fault him for that. This series is his baby. He does have a certain love for it and a certain sentimentality for it, but we as fans have also grown and evolved alongside it, and I think we all maybe want something a little bit different from what its progenitor wants to give us, and that's fine. I'll be going into this movie with as much of an open mind as humanly possible. 2 weeks to go until it comes out. Fox putting the reviews out now basically shows that they've got faith in this movie to succeed. They have faith in Alien Covenant to be a big hit in the first month of summer films for the summer box office, or summer blockbuster season for 2017, and I have high hopes. But I want to know what you guys think too. Do you think that this is going to be something that that the negative reviews are more truthful than the positive? Do you think that if you were coming into this and looking at these top fives, would they persuade you or dissuade you from going to see this movie? And also, do you think it's going to be good? These are things I want to know. Go ahead and let me know in the comments below. My name is, of course, Matt Jarbo. This has been 3 Buck Theater. I will talk to you guys later. Have yourself a fantastic day, and peace out.